Hello everybody, Blue Dooley, and in this video we're filming on Sunday the 22nd. We're starting the tear down process of the engine. I have pretty much all the parts I think I need to get everything cleaned up, get the new camshaft put in it, button it all back together, and start bolting adapters and things to the engine so we can get it hooked up to the Allison. We're dropping the oil pan first. I didn't get a wrench for the fan yet, so I'll have to do that, but we'll start by pulling off valve covers, mechanical pump still on the engine that's not being used anymore. Probably should pull the alternator off, get the turbo off, and maybe in this video we might get the whole head off. I'm not sure yet, we'll just have to see how things go. The oil pan is already off, so we'll skip to that. Well, there's the pan. A little crease from where it got set down a little too fast, but as you can see, no sludge, no shiny little bits of metal anywhere in the bottom of the pan. Doesn't appear that there's any shavings on that magnet that the drain plug's caught in or stuck in. So, do a little wipe. Yeah, she's she looks pretty clean to me. A little bit of a time lapse, just tearing down the engine some more. I do struggle with the fan a little bit because I did not go get a wrench. I just loosened up the bolt so I could get the pulley scooted forward a little bit and get one bolt out of the whole dang mount, and took the whole thing off in one piece. So I'll throw on a little teardown music and then we'll catch back up once we start talking more serious things. Struggled a bit, but we got the fan off finally. We're working on getting the gear cover off. And we'll get you in close. And boy, when they I had someone else do the killer dowel pin fix, which is just putting a little tab on one of the pin. on one of the alignment pins to keep it in there. They went pretty heavy with the RTV. My problem is my 10mm socket is long enough to fit, but the bolt's so long I can't use the impact on it. So I'll have to spin those off by hand, and then we'll get this gear cover pulled off. Let's see, make sure I got all the bolts out. Woo! Yeah, they put a lot of RTV on there. And this filler neck does unscrew. We'll set this off to the side. I'm running out of places to put stuff to the side. So everything on the 12 valve is gear driven. The oil pump over here, crank, cam, injection pump, and this runs out to the vacuum pump and the power steering pump. If you had an air compressor running off of it, it'd run the air compressor. But right in here is a little tab that holds the dowel pin in. And that killer dowel pin, if it backs out, it'll get caught in these gears, if you're unlucky, and tear the shit out of everything. Or if you are really, really lucky, it might fall into the oil pan or behind everything and not screw anything up. So that is one of the big issues with the 12 valve, is that killer dowel pin. But I am happy to see no unusual wear anywhere on any of these gears. Everything looks pretty good and clean on the inside. That's not even sludge, that's just a little bit of buildup. But everything so far, aside being filthy on the outside, looking pretty good. The front of the crank here has a little bit of a groove in it. So that's a little odd. But now that we got this part, we'll start getting some of the big accessories off. I need to get the alternator out. And I got the valve covers off. No sludge, no unusual buildup on any of those. Need to get the fuel lines off. So the outside of the engine, pretty filthy. Inside, looking all right. So on these, this is ATS exhaust manifold, the 3-piece one, because it'll crack. But uses Allen bolts, and I had to trim mine down to get it to get all the way in there. It wouldn't fully engage without trimming it a bit, because I need to get this line off. And yeah, that was interesting. As you can see, the rockers all pulled, intakes off, all the fuel lines are off. I need to get some tape to tape these up to keep crud from getting in the injectors of the fuel pump. The head bolts are all out, and the push rods are all out. Now, if you're going to be reusing your push rods, don't do like I did and just throw them willy-nilly on the ground. The head bolts and the push rods are not being reused. That's why I just set them on the ground. I did, however, put the rockers in the order in which they came off the head. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These little bolts, I don't know if they get replaced or not, but they actually go in the front of the rocker arm assembly. I don't think those get, I think those might get reused, but the head studs are what's going to replace those bolts. And I have the head popped free, so let's set you down there and see if we can get the head off. I might need to use a crane. It might. It might be really goddamn heavy. Yeah. All right, plan B, since I don't have anybody help me, use the engine hoist. Got the head off, and aside from a little bit of crud that got in there when I took the valve covers off, everything looks nice and clean. I don't see a lot of sludge or buildup, weird gunk. So not bad for an engine with 200, well, I wouldn't expect there to be too much gunk in an engine that only has 200,000 miles on it. The head gasket got a little damaged when I pulled the head up, but I don't see any weird deformities or any indications that it was starting to fail or go south, so that's really good. I'm gonna flop that down for there, and I'm gonna need to get a flashlight because you probably can't see shit at the moment. Now that I found a light, we'll get in here, and it's a LED light, so I apologize if it's flickering on the camera, but the cylinder walls still have their hash marks in every single cylinder wall. The little bit of gunk and debris is from pulling the head, so I'll need to get these cleaned out. But all the cylinders, none of them look any different really than the others. All the cylinder walls look pretty much the same. A little bit of water from the head when I pulled the head off, and a little bit of gunk will need to get cleaned out of the cylinders. I did leave the oil filter on just to keep that from dripping for now. Without the head in the way, it's easier to get to the two nuts on the back of the pump. There is a oil line you need to loosen, and I just completely took it off. Now, if you're leaving the head on, or if you're doing it kind of like me, when you go to remove the pump, after you get all the timing cover off, you kind of need to stop and take a minute to do a couple of things before you just yank the injection pump off, because you want to make sure the injection pump stays timed. On the crankshaft and the camshaft gear, I got a little paint mark on it too from the last time somebody worked on it. Your timing marks, you line those up so you know you're at top dead center. There is no timing marks on the injection pump gear. And the injection pump gear isn't keyed, like this has a little key here to keep it in time. The injection pump doesn't. This is a press fit gear. There is a pin right in there. You can push that in and it'll fit in a hole in that camshaft gear. That'll tell you if you're in top dead center, if the head's still on and you're at the correct firing sequence. Right here, there's a little cap. That's screwed in there. And this little cap, you'll drain oil out of it. Is you're looking for this little guy right here. This is plastic, so you need to be careful when you go to take that nut off. You have something kind of holding the gears in place, so you're not torquing against this plastic piece or you'll break it probably pretty easily. The hard part, not sure if we're going to be able to see it or not. Don't know how good that is, but there's a little tab on the pump that little piece fits over, and that'll lock the injection pump in timing. Let me get my bar. Might not have enough hands for this. get, let's do, pardon me while I try to figure out how to hold the camera and the light so you can see in there. You can see that little itty bitty tab there. That's what'll lock the pump in place for your timing. So you need to make sure you tab the pump before you take the pump off, or you will have a very difficult time getting it rotated around so it's in the correct firing sequence with the cam and the crankshaft. So I would tab that, and then to get this gear off, what I'm going to do is use the my pry bar here on the crank. I'm going to turn it just real gently till I don't have any gear lash, and then I'll bust it loose, take this off, and I'm going to do the same thing when I put it back on. I'll put a little pressure against the teeth and use a pry bar on the crankshaft to hold the gear in place and not let it slip while I'm tightening this when we get it back on. The vacuum pump, you don't need to pull the gear, it'll fit through the hole in this timing cover, so you can just take it and pull it right out of the way, which I'll probably do next, and then we'll get working on that pump to get it off. But like I said, you really kind of want to make sure you save your pump timing before you start taking everything apart. That'll save you a lot of headaches later on. The shaft is tapered, and while it does have a keeper notch in it, in this particular application you don't use the keeper. But by golly, the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh puller worked pretty good. I got the 15-piece set. I'll show you here in a minute. And so there's the timing gear, or the pump gear. And she didn't want to budge, but when she did, she just popped right off and fell on the concrete, of course. So we'll set you. We're running out of places to set things. I guess we'll put you on there for now. Yeah. Pittsburgh gear puller set, and it'll also split bearings. But these feet are actually small enough they can get in those holes and actually grab a hold of something. So now that I got that off, I can finally get the pump pulled off, because I really want to get to them that tappet cover with the pump out of the way so I can have a little more room to work on it. Well, there's the pump uninstalled, and it will still drip a little oil. That's okay, just so you know. So we got the pump off, because what I need to do is get in, and these are the tappets that ride on the camshaft that the push rods fit in. I'll grab one here. So that's what the tappet looks like. And to get the camshaft out, you have to hold all of them up as high as they'll go. So I need to find 12 zip ties, or go buy some zip ties. You can also use hose clamps to hold all those up. And then you also need a special tool, which is just a tube cut in half, that'll fit in where the camshaft is. So you can just drop those tappets right onto that little tube, pull them all out, and then you have to fish them up through to get them in. I'll show you that when we get to there. But right now I need to figure out how in the hell I'm gonna hold them in place. All right, went to the store, got a bunch more zip ties, got all of my tappets pulled up and zip tied out of the way. There's just 2 bolts that hold the camshaft in place. So we're gonna wiggle that out, and then I'm gonna show you how to make a special tool you need for removing the tappets, because there we go. You need a special tool to get the tappets in and out, of course. Well, there's the retainer. Old camshaft is pulled out. Still got to pull the gear off of it. But for the tappets, we're going to cut this piece of PVC pipe in half instead of buying a special tool. Because it's Saturday, after all the parts places are closed, and I don't want to spend money on a special tool when a piece of pipe will do the trick. So let me cut that in half, and then we will fish the tappets out. Okay, so I cut the pipe in half, but had a hard time keeping a straight line, so I taped it up just to cover up some of that fuzz from sawing through it, and I put a little bit of an end on there. So all we're gonna do is just feed it right where the camshaft goes. Maybe. Just like that. And then we're going to, I stood in front of the light, sorry about that. But I'll cut all these zip ties off, knock them tappets out. You can see the little bit of tube right in there. I'm going to stop myself here because the PVC pipe didn't actually work. It's too thick so the tappet doesn't fall far enough into it to be brought out this way. The way I actually got them all out was pulled that piece of tube out and just let them fall straight through the block. The problem with that method is if you have it in the truck, they'll get caught on the oil pickup tube, which I'll show you here in a little bit. So if you're working on it like I am out of the truck, you can take that oil pickup tube off and they fall straight out of the block, and you still don't need to get a special tool. The reason I need to change the tappets is this one right here is the old one. That one's the Hamilton camshaft one, and you can see a little bit of a size difference. Hamilton cams does not warranty their camshaft unless you use their tappets. The other thing you can do to make this go a little smoother than even messing with anything, take this oil pickup tube off and the tappets will just fall straight down out of the block. So if you're working on it in the truck, you're going to have to put a tube in here, catch them to keep them from falling in the oil pan or getting caught on this tube, and then the rods will hit them and that'll end poorly. So I'm going to actually, when I go to install them, I'm going to take this tube out and use a string and a magnet and just pull the lifter straight up into the block where it goes. The other interesting thing, this bushing in the front of the block is the only bushing the camshaft rides on. Look in here, and the rest of them all the way to the back of the engine are just it just rides right on the block, which is really kind of interesting. So that front one's wore out a little bit, and there's a few pits in it, but that might have been for me struggling to get it out of the get the camshaft out of the engine too. So we're going to end the video here and call this teardown video done. I am going to pull this gear assembly off the engine clean the engine up really well. And the next video, we'll start assembling it. I think, well, I'm hoping I can get the cam gear off this old camshaft, and I'll put the new camshaft in the freezer, and when I get ready to put that gear on, I'll put the gear in the oven. So hopefully that'll cause enough of a shrinkage and expansion that I can just slip it right together really quick and not have to take it somewhere to get that pressed on. That's at least what I'm hoping for. So, as always, if you enjoy my content, be sure to let me know what you like, and subscribe so you can see more content of this mess, because I have a mess. We'll catch you in the next one.